Ladies and gentlemen, Ladies and gentlemen, what exactly do we want on our side of the house? What we have told you very clearly in Lynn's speech was this, that we hope that unrestrained violence can be a taboo in a society, that that is no longer glorified, that is seen as something that is bad, that people will no longer see being violent as something that is good, as something that the people should be proud of, as something that is good. What do they want on outside of the house? At least what Yuki claimed was this. They want discussion on violence. First of all, I don't see how we need these sports for discussion happens to start with. But what we are going to tell you in our speech later on is how this will only lead to a distorted discussion. Now, before I go into my arguments, let's go into what PM told you and never responded by leader of opposition. They spent a lot of time telling you the characterization of what violent sports are and why the government has a right to set ethical standards to tell the public that violence is not something you should glorify. There is no response absolutely towards the argument of glorification of violence. What Yuki said in response, or in similar response, was this, that firstly, hey, people are still going to watch it. Those hardliners are still going to watch it. We never denied on our side of the house that hardliners are still going to pay and tune into these television channels. What we told you was that by setting these standards, by eliminating out of the public TV channels, the government is sending a message to the wider general public that these are things that we do not agree with, that these standards are standards that we do not want to accept. We believe the message is sent even if these people at the end of the day still choose to tune into these channels. But secondly, what they told you was this. Yuki said, oh, but people are restrained in these violent sports, or in these bloody sports. That ignored entirely what Lin told you in her PM speech. We told you that boxing, the MMA, the entire goal of winning the tournament is to knock out the other person. But then Yuki then say, hey, but it's all about winning the championship. The intention is okay. But ladies and gentlemen, the debate is never about the intention of the athlete. The debate is about the perception of the audience. It's all about how people sitting in front of the television think. And what we are telling you is this. When you watch a fictional movie, you know that all of these are fake. You know that people are just playing actors and actresses. But when you see in a tournament, what you see is that people are violent. People want to beat the hell out of another person. And in order to win, you want to beat out, you want to box out the other person, you want to kill, or to some extent even, make the other person lie into blood. When you watch these television channels, the very reason why Christy got traumatized is because blood does happen. People does not go restrained. People go all out. They want to use every single mean in order to knock out the other person. And what do you think when you are part of the audience? What you'll be thinking is either, like Christy does, you think that it's disgusting, but more likely, people who tune into these channels are people who think that, hey, these are fun things. I'm actually proud and I like this particular fighter because he's bloody, because he's violent. And that is when glorification of violence happens. Because the one who wins is the one that goes the least restrained. The one who wins is the one that is the most violent. And that is when the promotion is not violence per se, but unrestrained violence that the government does not want to uphold. No. Now lastly, on Yuki's argument on how, hey, but there will be discourse, there will be discussion on how violence may or may not be okay. Firstly, we say that this discourse can happen with those movies and whatnot that we still have even on our side of the house. But moreover, what we say the comparison is this. On our side, discussion happens on the basis that violence is seen as a taboo. We don't want a discussion to end up saying that, hey, unrestrained violence is something that we actually like. This is a culture that the government wants to actively deter us from. But what they get on their side of the house is that they slowly normalize the culture of violence. What people think is that, hey, it's not that bad. Sometimes, unrestrained violence actually gets us glory. It's the thing that makes us say men. It's the things that give us our manhood. And this is where problems happen, when people lose the constraint and lose the control. The government does not want a potential culture to be like this. Now, onto my argument. Before that, go.
So the movies like Kill Bill and So is also glorification of violence. That's why they're rated.
Yes, firstly, as Jen said on his bench, that's why it's written. But secondly, what's more, as we told you, the distinction it gave you, as given you by Lin, was this, that when you see a movie, you know that it is fictional. There is a distance between you and the movie. But when you know that those blood are probably fake blood. But when you see a bloodshed in MMA, you know that those are real blood. You know that those bruises are real bruises. You know that the fight is real. That is when the fictional distance gets eliminated, and that is when the audience gets adapted towards that violence. Now, on to my argument. What I'm going to tell you, two things. Firstly, on how public television acts as a communal space and why the government has a right and has a stake in that space and how do we change that. And secondly, Also on how we change the behavior of these blood sports organizers and athletes, and how we change them for better, clashing with what Yuki told you as well. So firstly, on television as a communal space, the very particular nature of television, and that's why we have to ban it, because television often acts as a point of sharing point and a communal point between different people in a wider society. We construct ourselves as a common society because we have common experiences. But it's very difficult for an entire nation to have common experiences together. So more often than not, our daily common experiences are constructed by watching the same television channel, by watching the very same television movie or same television reality show. And what happens with this particular action is that when people think and when people share this particular act of violence, when people share this particular MMA fight as their communal point of reference, this is when people say, hey, we all watch this communal reference, and it becomes the memory of part of the national culture in that society. Yes, we concede that not everyone watch TV right now, given the progression of media, but still a lot of people, especially in the older generations, television still acts as their major reference points when it comes to points of sharing, when it comes to points of constructing the community. And we do not have a problem of that construction of national community. We think that government has a stake to change the construction, to eliminate things that the government doesn't like, to eliminate things that does not fit into the ethical standard that governments have, outside the memories. But lastly, on how it changes behavior of blood sports organizers. Because what we're saying is that unlike what Yuki tells you, these organizers, these athletes have a stake in having more exposure, in having more sponsors, in letting more people to know them. So more likely than not, these organizers are going to make it less bloody. They're going to introduce more regulations so you can re-enter into the arena of public TV. So what we're going to get is more athletes and more sports events that are actually less bloody, that actually goes into regulation, that actually do not spread the culture of unrestrained violence on our side of the house. What do we get on our side? We get the denormalization of bloody sports, we get the denormalization of unrestrained violence. We eliminate these things that are not part of our ethical standards outside our national memory, and even for people who opt in, they will know consciously that these are things that we do not actively agree with. We believe it is on our side that we get a better labeling on violence, plus better protect our society, better protect our culture. We do not know how any of these happen on their side of the house. Very proud to propose. Thank you very much.